person in the mirror is lying to you. Not the reflection, not the face staring back, not the eyes. Okay. The lie comes from something much deeper. The story you've been telling yourself. Okay. The story that explains why you haven't started, why you haven't changed, why you haven't become the person you know you're capable of becoming. Okay. Every day, millions of people stand in front of a mirror. They see the same face, the same body, okay, the same life, and without realizing it, they repeat the same internal script. I'm trying, I'm working on it. Again, my time will come. I just need the right opportunity. I'll start when things calm down. I'll start when I'm ready. The words sound harmless, reasonable, even. Okay. But sometimes the most dangerous lies are the ones that sound true. Okay. Because the greatest deception isn't when someone else lies to you. It's when you lie to yourself so often that you stop recognizing the truth. When the truth is uncomfortable. And the truth doesn't care about intentions. It doesn't care about plans. It doesn't care about promises. Okay? The truth only cares about evidence. What did you do? What did you build? What did you improve? Okay? What did you become? Because reality is built from actions, not explanations. Yet explanations have become a modern addiction. Okay, people explain why they can't, explain why they haven't, explain why it's difficult, explain why they'll begin tomorrow, and every explanation feels productive. But explanations do not move your life forward. Action does. Imagine standing in front of a mirror that doesn't reflect your appearance. Instead, it reflects your habits, okay, your discipline, your consistency, your courage, your excuses, your daily choices. What would you see? Would you see someone moving toward their goals or someone moving toward their justifications? Because there is a difference, a massive difference. One creates growth, the other creates comfort, and comfort has a strange way of disguising itself as progress. It whispers. It tells you that thinking is the same as doing, that planning is the same as acting, that wanting is the same as becoming. But they are not the same, not even close. Okay? The person in the mirror wants you to believe that tomorrow will be different, that somehow motivation will arrive, that confidence will suddenly appear, that discipline will become easier. But tomorrow is built by today. And if today changes nothing, tomorrow usually changes nothing too. That is the lie. The lie that more time automatically creates a better future. It doesn't. Only different actions create a different future. And that's where the real battle begins, because deep down, you already know what needs to change. And you know which habits are hurting you. You know which distractions are stealing your time. Okay? You know which excuses you repeat most often. You know the conversations you avoid having. You know the responsibilities you keep postponing, you know. And that knowledge creates tension. A tension between who you are dot and who you could become. Most people spend years trying to silence that tension. They distract themselves, entertain themselves, keep busy themselves, but the tension remains because potential never disappears. It waits quietly, patiently, kinda like a voice in the background reminding you that you're capable of more. And every year you ignore it, the voice grows louder, not because it wants to punish you, kinda, because it wants to wake you up. One day you'll realize something powerful. The mirror was never your enemy. The reflection was never your problem. The problem was the story, the identity, the narrative you accepted without questioning, the belief that you were limited, the belief that change was difficult, the belief that your circumstances defined your future. Because the moment you challenge that story, everything begins to change, not instantly, not dramatically, but permanently. You stop asking, what do I want? And start asking, who am I becoming? You stop focusing on outcomes and start focusing on identity. Because success is not something you achieve, it is something you grow into. Okay. And growth begins the moment you stop believing the lies you've been telling yourself. Okay? The person in the mirror is lying to you. But for the first time, dot, you're starting to see through it. Hmm? A lonely man standing in front of a large bathroom mirror at midnight, dim blue lighting, tired eyes, reflections slightly distorted, cinematic shadows, atmosphere of self doubt and hidden potential. The strange thing about self deception is that it rarely feels like deception, it feels like logic. Again, it feels like caution, it feels like patience, it feels like responsibility. That is why it becomes so dangerous. Okay? Because if a lie looked like a lie, nobody would believe it. Instead, it arrives disguised as wisdom. Wait until you're ready. Don't take risks yet. You need more preparation. Maybe next month, maybe next year. And little by little, these thoughts become familiar. Then familiarity becomes belief, and belief becomes identity. And before long, you stop questioning the story, you simply live inside it. Imagine a person standing in a prison cell. Okay. The door is unlocked, the key is hanging on the wall, freedom is available, yet they never leave. Okay? Not because they can't, because they don't believe they can. That is how many people live their entire lives. Okay? Not trapped by reality, trapped by perception, trapped by stories, trapped by invisible limits they accepted years ago. Maybe someone told them they weren't smart enough. Maybe they failed once and turned that failure into an identity. Maybe they compared themselves to others for so long that they forgot who they were. Heck, whatever the reason, the result is the same. A powerful human being begins living like a limited one. And the tragedy is not that they lack potential. The tragedy is that they stop recognizing it. Every day they gather evidence for the wrong story. Every mistake becomes proof they are incapable. And every setback becomes proof they should quit. Every obstacle becomes proof that success belongs to someone else. Meanwhile, they ignore all evidence pointing in the opposite direction. The small wins, the lessons learned, the progress made, the strength developed through hardship, the courage shown during difficult moments. The mind becomes a biased judge. It collects evidence that supports the story it already believes. And if the story is weak, the future becomes weak. Because beliefs influence actions, actions influence habits, habits influence identity, and identity influences destiny. That chain controls more lives than talent ever will. Look around. Again, some of the most talented people in the world remain stuck, not because they lack ability, because they lack belief. Okay? At the same time, people with average talent achieve extraordinary things. Why? Because they refused to accept the story that said they couldn't. They challenged it, they questioned it, they replaced it, and eventually they became someone new. This is where transformation truly begins, not in your bank account, okay? Not in your career, not in your body, not in your circumstances. Okay? Transformation begins in the stories you allow yourself to believe. Okay? Because your life will always move in the direction of your strongest beliefs. Okay? If you believe growth is possible, you'll search for opportunities. Okay? If you believe change is possible, you'll take action. If you believe discipline matters, you'll build habits. But if you believe you're trapped, you'll find evidence for that too. You know, the mirror doesn't create the story, it reflects it. And every morning, whether you realize it or not, you are deciding which story to reinforce. The story of limitation, okay? Or the story of possibility. One story keeps you safe, the other sets you free. Okay? One story explains why nothing changes, the other demands that you change, and change is uncomfortable. That is why most people avoid it, because change forces you to let go of an identity that feels familiar. And even if that identity is hurting you, even if that identity is keeping you small, even if that identity is stealing years from your life, the familiar feels safe. But safety is not always growth. And sometimes safety is stagnation wearing a friendly mask. And one day, if you stay there long enough, you begin to notice something. The excuses stop working. Again, the stories stop comforting you. The reasons stop making sense. Because deep down, you know the truth. Like, you know what you're capable of. You know you've been playing smaller than your potential. Like, you know you've been waiting for permission that was never required. And when that realization arrives, or the mirror starts changing, for the first time, you stop seeing a victim of circumstances. Again, you stop seeing someone trapped by the past. You stop seeing someone defined by old failures. Instead, you begin seeing a person with responsibility, a person with choice, a person with power. And power is dangerous. Okay? Because once you realize you have it, you can no longer pretend you don't. The story begins to crack, the illusion begins to weaken, and behind it, something stronger is waiting, a new identity, a new standard, okay? A new version of yourself, one that has been there all along, waiting for you to stop believing the lie. K. An old prison cell with the door wide open, sunlight pouring inside, a person standing motionless near the exit, symbolizing self imposed limitations and invisible mental chains, dramatic cinematic lighting. There comes a moment when the lie can no longer survive, not because someone exposes it, okay? Not because life suddenly becomes easier, but because the evidence becomes too overwhelming to ignore, okay? You begin to notice a pattern. The same goals carried from one year into the next, the same version of yourself showing up again and again. And for the first time, instead of blaming circumstances, you start asking a different question. What if the thing holding me back isn't the world? What if it's the identity I've been protecting? That question changes everything. Okay? Because most people spend years trying to change their results while defending the mindset that created those results. They want a different future while holding on to the same habits. Okay? They want a stronger life while protecting a weaker identity. They want transformation without surrendering the version of themselves that needs transforming. But growth does not work that way. Every new level requires an old version of you to disappear, not physically, psychologically. The person who constantly procrastinates cannot coexist with the person who consistently executes. Can- The person who always seeks comfort cannot coexist with the person who embraces discipline. Yeleka. The person who waits for perfect conditions cannot coexist with the person who creates opportunities. And at some point, one identity must replace the other. And replacement is uncomfortable. eh? Because your old identity knows how to survive. It knows your fears. It knows your insecurities. Okay. It knows which excuses sound convincing. It knows which distractions work best. Okay. It has spent years building influence inside your mind. So when you begin changing, resistance appears. Okay? Not because you're moving in the wrong direction, because you're moving in the right one. Okay? The old version of you doesn't disappear quietly. It fights. It tells you to slow down. Okay? It tells you to rest. It tells you to wait. Okay? It tells you that tomorrow would be a better day to start. And if you listen carefully, you'll notice something strange. The voice sounds familiar, okay, because you heard it your entire life. It's the voice that protected comfort, the voice that defended average, okay, the voice that kept you safe from failure, but it also kept you safe from growth. And now you're beginning to understand the cost. The cost was never just lost time. Okay? The cost was the person you could have become. Okay, every year you delayed action, a stronger version of you remained undeveloped. Every opportunity ignored created a future that never existed. Every excuse protected the present while weakening the future. That realization hits hard because suddenly the problem is no longer abstract, it's personal. Okay. You begin imagining the life that could have been built, the confidence that could have been developed, and the skills that could have been mastered, the opportunities that could have been created. And for a moment, regret appears. But regret is not always an enemy. Sometimes regret is a teacher. Sometimes regret is proof that you finally see clearly. The danger is not feeling regret. The danger is staying there. Because regret should not become a home, it should become fuel. Fuel for action, fuel for change, and fuel for refusing to repeat the same cycle again. This is where something powerful begins. You stop asking how to feel motivated and start asking how to become consistent. You stop chasing inspiration and start building standards. You stop relying on emotion and start relying on decisions. Because emotions change, standards remain fluctuate. Feelings fluctuate. Identity endures. And identity is exactly what is changing now. Not through a dramatic breakthrough, not through a motivational speech, through repeated evidence. Every disciplined action becomes evidence. Every promise kept becomes evidence. Every difficult task completed becomes evidence. Every excuse rejected becomes evidence. Evidence that the old story is losing control. Evidence that the mirror has been wrong. Evidence that you are becoming someone new. At first, nobody notices. The world sees the same face, the same voice, the same person. But internally, a revolution is happening, a quiet revolution, the kind that changes everything long before anyone else can see it. And that's the beauty of real transformation. It starts in silence, before the results, before the recognition, before the success. Okay. There is a period where nobody sees your growth but you know, a period where the external world hasn't caught up with the internal change. And most people quit there because they want visible proof. But the strongest people continue because they understand something important. The roots grow before the tree, the foundation forms before the building, the identity changes before the life changes. And right now, whether you realize it or not, your foundation is being rebuilt. Okay? A cracked mirror spreading fractures across the reflection, one side showing a defeated version of the person, the other side showing a strong. The moment the truth becomes louder than the lie, everything begins to change. Real change is quieter than that. Like it happens in ordinary moments, moments that seem insignificant when they occur. Okay? A decision to get up when you wanted to stay in bed, a decision to keep working when nobody was watching. Okay? A decision to remain disciplined when excuses felt easier. A decision to continue when motivation disappeared, small moments, small choices, small victories. But those small victories begin accumulating. And accumulation is powerful, okay? Because success is rarely created by one giant action. Okay? It is created by thousands of small actions moving in the same direction. That is why consistency always defeats intensity. Anyone can be intense for a day, anyone can be motivated for a weekend, anyone can feel inspired for a week. Okay? But consistency requires identity. Consistency requires standards. Consistency requires becoming someone who follows through regardless of emotion. And that is exactly what is happening now. The new identity is beginning to take control. Okay? At first, the changes are invisible. You notice them before anyone else does. You react differently. You think differently. Like you speak differently. You carry yourself differently. Not because you are pretending, because you are changing. The old version of you would negotiate. The new version decides. The old version looked for comfort. Okay. The new version looks for growth. The old version asked, "What do I feel like doing today?" Again, the new version asks, "What needs to be done?" That difference seems small, but it changes everything. Okay? Because the quality of your life is directly connected to the quality of the standards you live by. And standards are powerful. Standards determine what you tolerate, what you accept, what you reject, what you pursue, what you become. People often talk about goals, but goals are temporary. Standards are permanent. A goal can be achieved once, a standard influences every day. That is why truly transformed people stop obsessing over outcomes. Okay. They focus on identity, they focus on becoming the type of person who naturally creates better outcomes. And once that shift happens, results begin appearing almost automatically, not instantly, but inevitably. Okay. Because your habits start working for you instead of against you. Your discipline starts creating momentum. Okay. Your momentum starts creating confidence. Your confidence starts creating opportunities. And opportunities start creating results. Okay. One thing begins feeding the next until eventually your life starts reflecting the changes that were invisible for so long. And people begin noticing. Friends notice, family notices, co-workers notice. Okay, the same people who once knew you as one version now see something different, more focused, more disciplined, more confident, more intentional. And they often think the transformation happened suddenly. But you know better. You know it started months ago, in silence, in private, in the moments nobody saw. Because transformation always becomes visible long after it begins. Like the world notices the fruit, it never notices the roots. And that's why so many people misunderstand success. They see the outcome, they don't see the years of internal change that made the outcome possible. But you do because you've lived it. You felt the resistance. You've fought the old habits. You've challenged the old story. You've built evidence for a new identity, one action at a time. And now something remarkable is happening. The mirror is changing, not because your reflection changed, because your perception changed. And you no longer see someone trapped by the past. You no longer see someone defined by mistakes. Kanaka. You no longer see someone limited by old beliefs. And for the first time, the person staring back at you feels different. Not because life became perfect, but because you became stronger. And strength changes everything. Strength changes how you handle setbacks. Okay, strength changes how you respond to fear. Strength changes how you approach opportunity. Strength changes how you see yourself. And once you see yourself differently, the world begins responding differently too. Because confidence is not loud. Real confidence is certainty. The certainty that you can trust yourself. The certainty that you will follow through. Okay? The certainty that you can handle discomfort. Okay? The certainty that you are no longer controlled by the lies you once believed. And that certainty becomes visible. Okay? Not through words, through behavior, through standards, through consistency, through results. The old story is fading now. Not completely. Sometimes it still whispers. Sometimes it still tries to return, but it no longer has control. Okay? Because you build something stronger, a new identity, a stronger standard, a different future. And for the first time, the person in the mirror is beginning to tell the truth. A person walking alone through heavy rain at night in a city street, head held high, focused expression, reflection. And now you finally understand something that most people never do. The person in the mirror was never your enemy. The real lie was the story. The story you repeated for years without questioning it. The story that said you were limited. The story that said you needed permission. Permission. Okay? The story that said we were not ready. The story that convinced you that someday was a strategy. For a long time you believed it. Not because you were weak, not because you lacked intelligence, but because repetition creates familiarity. And familiarity often disguises itself as truth. When you hear the same message long enough, you stop analyzing it. You start accepting it. Or you start living by it, and eventually you start becoming it. That is why identities are so powerful. Okay? Because identities do not just influence behavior, they create behavior. Okay? A person who believes they are disciplined acts differently than someone who believes they are lazy. Okay? A person who believes they are capable responds differently than someone who believes they are powerless. Like a person who believes they can grow approaches life differently than someone who believes they are fixed. The belief comes first, the behavior follows, and the behavior creates the results. For years, you may have focused on changing results, trying to improve the outside while ignoring the inside, trying to create a different future while protecting the same identity. But now you see the truth. Okay? The outside changes after the inside changes. The results change after the standards change. The future changes after the identity changes. Everything begins there. And that realization is liberating and can, because it means your future is not trapped in your past. It means your mistakes are not your destiny. Okay? It means your failures are not your identity. Okay? It means your previous limitations do not have permanent authority over your life. You are not the mistakes you made. You are not the fears you felt. You are not the excuses you repeated. Okay. You are not the person you used to be. You are the person you choose to become next. That choice exists every day, every morning, every decision, every moment when nobody is watching. That is where identity is built, not in grand speeches, not in dramatic breakthroughs, but in repeated choice, ordinary choices. The choices that seem insignificant until years later, when their consequences become impossible to ignore. Look back at your life. Every major outcome came from repetition. Every strength came from repetition. Every weakness came from repetition. Everything compounded, everything accumulated. Anchor. And the future will work exactly the same way. The question is no longer whether change is possible. Okay? The question is what direction your repetition will take. Because your future self is being created right now, not tomorrow. Okay? Not next month, not next year, right now, with every action you take. And one day, sooner than you think, you will meet that future version. You will look at your life, your habits, your character, your standards, your results, and you will understand exactly how you arrived there. Through the story you chose to believe, through the standards you chose to live by, and through the decisions you chose to repeat. That is why today matters. That is why this moment matters. Because every transformation begins with awareness. The awareness that the old story is no longer serving you. Okay? The awareness that the old identity is no longer enough. Okay? The awareness that you are capable of more than you have allowed yourself to become. And once that awareness arrives, everything changes. You stop waiting, you stop negotiating, you stop asking for permission, and you stop looking for certainty because you realize something powerful. Okay? The life you want is not waiting for a better version of circumstances. Okay? It is waiting for a better version of you. A version built through discipline, a version strengthened by responsibility, a version defined by action instead of explanation, a version that keeps promises to itself, a version that no longer hides behind stories. And when that version finally appears, the mirror becomes something different, and no longer a reminder of limitations, no longer a reminder of excuses, no longer a reminder of who you used to be. It becomes evidence, evidence of growth, evidence of courage, evidence of transformation, evidence that the lie has finally lost. And one morning you'll stand in front of that mirror again. The same reflection, the same eyes staring back at you. But this time something will feel different. Because for the first time in a very long time, the person in the mirror won't be lying to you. And for the first time in a very long time, You'll believe them, Kane. A confident figure standing before a massive floor to ceiling mirror. At sunrise, golden light filling the room, reflection perfectly aligned and powerful, expression calm and victorious, cinematic masterpiece symbolizing truth, self mastery, and complete identity transformation.